The question is, would you give up your dream if this happened to you? What am I talking about? Well, this Christmas I got a wonderful Christmas surprise and I was diagnosed with cancer of the bladder. Imagine, from this, sailing and enjoying myself, to this in hospital in one single day. I have cancer. There you can see my catheter. I've got cancer of the board shorts, as I like to call it. However, it's not a funny situation. I had to quickly establish what I was going to do with the rest of my life, and I can tell you, I've seen the horizon. I've seen the end of the life, as you might say, and I've decided that we're going to have to go through this anxiety, self-talk, to try to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. So what I did, of course, was I started to freak out. I figured it out how bad it could really get. Well, obviously death is the worst that can happen. What would happen if I died today? I've got a beautiful 14-year-old daughter who cannot look after herself yet. She's very mature, but simply can't do it at this stage. So I haven't shown her how to live the life by herself yet. I'm doing my best. However, she lives on her cell phone. And is it likely that I'm going to die without teaching her all of life skills? Probably. So what would I do if I died today? I would be very sad. However, we've got to stay positive, and I'm going to do a list of things that need to be done to get me through this situation. Here it is here, pocket. Make a new plan, Stan. I've got to make a list of the preferred results, and my new life starts today. So here is my list of things that I need to do. The list of new essentials. First thing is that I need to live in a tropical climate. You can see that's number one on my list. We'll go into that in some detail later, but it has to be in the tropics. New Zealand is way too cold for me. I cannot stand the winters in New Zealand, in spite of the fact that it's my home country. So the second one is that it must be close to the ocean. So if I'm going to live somewhere, it must be close to the ocean. I don't want any mountains. I don't want any hills. Nepal is out of the question. I don't have anything in common with Denver, Colorado. I don't want the mountains of Java, and I certainly don't want any mountains in the Swiss Alps. I don't want to go skiing in France. So simple fact is that it's got to be close to the sea. Plus, I've set myself a challenge during my life sailing around the world on my cruising yacht. I never learned to surf, because the surf and the waves and the swell is really the opposite of what a sailor wants. A sailor likes nice, calm lagoons and safe anchorages, so surfing was never a big part of my life. However, I do want to learn to surf, so that's one of the things that I'm going to put on my bucket list. Number 3 is that I need to make money. So for that, I need to establish what my strengths are. What are my knowledge strengths? Sailing, diving, chartering, sales, marine industry, all of these things I have certain lifetime knowledge of, so I've got to be able to convert that somehow to making money. Number 4, I need access to good medical services, because cancer doesn't go away unless you're really, really lucky. It might happen to me, it might not. But most countries on my bucket list have got excellent health services, and that includes all of the Southeast Asian countries that I'm familiar with, includes Mexico, includes the Caribbean. So medical services, while they need to be of a high quality, they don't necessarily need to be expensive, and I'll go into that in a bit of detail later. I need fast internet services, number 5, for my daughter's schooling. I've got to get her to the educational standard of university entrance for virtually any university in the world when she wants to go to university. So that requires that I have a high-speed internet so she can do collective learning with 5 or 6 people with one teacher. I'll be using something called Crimson program, which I'll be happy to describe later on. Number 6, I need affordable real estate prices. Now, irrespective of whether I'm in the lucky position to be able to buy or rent in any one of these preferred locations, then it's absolutely necessary for these real estate values to be reasonable. When you're talking about reasonable, you absolutely have to discount Australia, Hawaii, the United States, parts of Florida, the Caribbean. Most of these areas are just so ridiculously priced that a normal person like me could not afford them. And I include New Zealand in that as well, Fiji also. So I've got to have something though reasonable in terms of purchase or rent. And by renting, I mean that the rental rates in the developed countries are just way too high. So the second thing, the number 7 thing, is that I need friendly locals and pretty girls. I'm single. You know that I'm 76. Doesn't mean much to most people, but I can tell you that I do need a nice, friendly partner and somebody that's got a great deal of empathy. So that's an important aspect about where I want to go and live. So pretty girls are necessary. Number 8, I need residential and business laws that are friendly to foreigners. A lot of people work these days, as they call them, remotely, and in some cases the governments in the world are trying to make that more difficult and trying to apply taxes to internet income. So I've got to find a country that doesn't have that amount of sophistication if possible. So friendly labour laws, also friendly laws for immigration, so that I'm not constantly jumping out and travelling back to different countries for visa runs, as they call them. So we'll try to find somewhere that doesn't have that situation. I must have an active, number 9 is must have an active sailing, cruising, diving community. It just so happens that I get on pretty well with sailors. We've got a lot of shared common ground, so I like talking to these guys. I like the sailing type activity, outdoor activity. So the place that I choose has to have an active international brand of sailing, diving, fishing community. Now, number 10, it must have a village atmosphere. So wherever I choose to live, it won't be Bangkok, it won't be Jakarta, it won't be any of the big cities in the world, it won't be Honolulu. It'll be somewhere with a village atmosphere, because my perfect situation is to come home one day, have a perfect friend of mine sitting down after having made his own cup of tea in my house, because there's no lock on the door. I feel comfortable when that happens, so I like lots of visitors. And so I'm going to go through the list of those 10 things that I've listed there and show you how I evolve my perfect location. So, all right, let's start with number 1, the tropical climate. Well, the candidates on my shortlist are Cuba and the Bahamas, Roatan in Honduras, the BVI, so that's the British Virgin Islands and the US Virgin Islands, other Caribbean islands, including Jamaica and St. Bart's, etc., Cambodia and Vietnam, Thailand, Myanmar and Burma, Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines and Indonesia, and of course Mexico. So if we go through them one by one, there's fors and against for most of them. And for example, anything in the Caribbean, although very perfect in many ways, including the Bahamas, it's actually quite a long way away from New Zealand, just in case. So a trans-Pacific flight or a international flight of that length sometimes can be quite expensive and also quite hard to organise in the short term. So Roatan and Honduras, I've got a very close relationship with Roatan because my daughter's actually Honduran. And so it's attractive for me to go to Honduras. Roatan is a little bit disjointed. It's quite a long way from one part of Roatan to another. So transportation can be a bit tricky. It's very nice, but it's a bit tricky. English speaking. I speak Spanish. Yo hablo español también, so I speak Spanish. That's not an issue. The other Caribbean islands are very attractive. Some of them you've seen famous on the world stage for sailing, diving, visiting. Cambodia and Vietnam coming into Southeast Asia. Cambodia is the new frontier. It's like Thailand was about 20 years ago, and there's certain aspects about that have a lot of appeal. Malaysia and Singapore, I spent 6 years in Malaysia. I developed the first international charter yacht business in Malaysia, still functioning. And Singapore, not quite what I want. I enjoyed my time in Malaysia, but I'm not prepared to go back at this stage to Malaysia. The Philippines and Indonesia, I've never been to the Philippines, although I've sailed around it a great deal. The destination of choice in the Philippines would be Boracay Island. And for those of you who know it, it's an extremely densely populated tourist beach, one of the most famous beaches in the world, absolutely beautiful. But I get the idea that the island is pretty much dependent on inter-island services for all its goods and services. And so the fact that I would be dealing daily with day tourists, although constant, doesn't particularly appeal to me. So for that reason, I'm probably going to strike Boracay off my list and leaving me Mexico and Indonesia. So the very attractive island for me in Mexico is Cozumel. I spent a number of years there. It's got a fantastic climate. It is almost the perfect location. And Indonesia, and on my short list, I've developed, for various reasons, which I'll show you later, I've developed that I will probably go to Bali in Indonesia for several reasons, but that will be the subject of the next video. So with that, we'll change our whole lifestyle. We're going to sell off all our shit. We're going to buy an old sailboat. We're going to sail to the Caribbean, but in this case, it's going to be Indonesia, and we're never coming back. So with that, I leave you today, and I look forward to talking to you for the next segment. See you soon. Bye-bye.